Okay, wicked. We'll start off with 5 more mantras and then we'll get on with the talk. Ek oankar satnam karta purkh nirbhau nirvairu akal murti ajuni sabhang gur prasad jap ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. So I just want to say I've never done this before. I'm really bad at speaking in front of people, but I'll give it a go. So yeah, I'm not here to teach you anything about Sikhi really. I'll try my best. I'm not very knowledgeable, but I've been asked to talk about my journey into Sikhi. I've been asked before by people. I've always said no, because I'm like, no, I'm not good at it. I'm bad at telling stories. Even if it's a good story to tell, I'll still be bad at it. But I know, Santhiya messaged me and then I ended up saying yes. So here I am. Yeah, so that's all it is. That's all it is. We're all on the same path, right? We all arrived at the same location today, literally. We all got here pretty much the same way. So I don't want anyone to think I'm better than anybody. I definitely, that's not the point of me doing the talk compared to somebody else. I guess the point in doing it is trying to inspire somebody. Even if you inspire one person, then it's worth it, isn't it? And I guess the bigger picture is we're all on the exact same path because we've all gone through however many life forms to get here and become a human, isn't it? And the fact that we're a human, I mean, we're all basically the same in that way. And we've all been given the exact same opportunity. And we're all that close, right? We're all really close. And so it's just that little tiny step that we've got to take now, isn't it? So yeah, my background. So that's me when I was a kid. You didn't need to see that, but now you have. I'm from a Christian family, but I don't really know what that means because I grew up, I didn't learn anything about Christianity really. It's like people say typical Japji family, right? A very similar thing, you kind of, there's not really much dharam growing up. I just kind of, cultural Christianity. Non-religious upbringing, yeah, so like, went to church, once or twice a year, guaranteed. And then if there's a funeral or a wedding, we'd go as well, but that was it. So even like this idea of a Sunday sect, right? If you're a Sunday Christian, then you're bare religious. But if you're a Sunday sect, that's not very religious. So the standard's a lot lower as well. It's a lot more like whitewashed, you could say. So I had a base knowledge of Christianity. I'd say if someone asked me a question about Christianity, like a really basic one, I could give it a go. But like, that's about it, to be honest. I wouldn't call myself a Christian. If someone asked me if I was a Christian back in the day, nah, I would have said no. I grew up in Nottingham. Where I grew up is a really white area. So I didn't have like any Punjabi Sangat around me, any Sikh Sangat at all. It was like kind of, I don't know. Just basically, I think 95% white where I grew up. And then, school, pretty much the same. And I had no Punjabi friends growing up until like a bit later on. I always enjoyed reading, and that's important for later. I was always reading something. I wasn't smart, but I was always reading something. So pre-Sikhi, and I always tell this part of my journey, I think it's quite important. It wasn't anything to do with Sikhi, but I'll tell you anyway. So this was like age 16, just before I came into Sikhi. I had no like knowledge of any religion, my own or other people's at all. And so I was quite unguarded about my reading. I used to like read everything. I used to read like historical books, political books, philosophical books. I just had no idea about religion. I used to read a lot of Karl Marx, Hegel, Engels, things like that. And I was like really unguarded about how good I am at debating. I could always win a debate. Even if I was wrong, I'd still win. And that was my thing. And one day, I got to a debate with one Muslim, one Christian, a Hindu, and a Sikh on a table at lunchtime in college. And it's the first time I've been bad at the debate. And it hurt my ego a lot. So I got beat really badly. I was the only atheist on that table and I lost that debate. And so after that, I was like, okay, now for the sake of debating, I'm going to learn everything about every religion. And so I asked my one of my Muslim friends in my year, like about Islam a little bit, and he was during Ramadan. He pulled his Quran out of his bag and he gave me the Quran straight and told me read that. I was like, okay, that was a bit much. He was ready to give me his Quran. He gave me his Quran, and then I came back to him a month later and I'd read it. I wasn't really that interested, so I was kind of doing it half and half. And it didn't put me off Islam completely. Like, it was all right, It was interesting. I think the worst parts of Islam aren't in the Quran. So then I started reading hadiths. So Sahib Bukhari and Sahib Muslim, that's where the hadiths are. So that's where, the interesting parts of Muhammad's kind of life, that's where that is. And so I read that, and then I was like, okay, well, all these Muslim on Speaker's Corner are doing a good job of kind of hiding certain parts about their religion. I was like, okay, interesting. So I started reading up on my own religion, because, that feels like an obvious one. So I read the Bible, King James Bible, which is a heavily edited version of the Bible, by the way. I read it all and I was like, okay, Christians are hiding a lot about their religion as well on Speaker's Corner. It's interesting. It wasn't all negative when I read these books, but it didn't change my negative outlook on religion very easily. And so I was like, okay, now I'm going to read the Torah, which is the Jewish holy book, and the Talmud as well, which is a later book by Jews. I was like, okay, that's really interesting. I'm not going to go back to that. And then I read the Gita, and the Gita got me. The Gita got me in. I read the Bhagavad Gita, and I was like, okay, this is actually quite interesting. And from there, I was like, okay, religion hasn't got me, but whatever this is has got me a little bit, nearly. And then I read this with the Tipitaka, which is basically the 3 granths that make up Buddhist thought. So one of them is a granth about how to be a monk. The second one is a granth about kind of the actual writings of Buddha. And then the third one is a bit more complicated, like Adhyatam. So it's kind of ideas about God, ideas about the universe and things like that. And that one, like, okay, that was too much. I only read half of that one. And then, so I did all of this. And after that, I got into another conversation with a Muslim, a Sikh. I think it was the exact same people. There was one atheist on the table as well. And in this debate, I was no longer on the atheist side. I didn't know where I was, so I just kind of shut up and listened. And there was one Sikh. And the entire debate became about Sikhi. everyone was just listening to this one person talking about Sikhi. And I was like, okay, how have I done all of this to try and win people over in debates, and I don't know nothing about Sikhi? And it's because I didn't have Sangat, I didn't know any sect, so I was like, okay, maybe Sikhi is not worth learning about. And then what I did was, from a place of Ankar, this was from a place of Ankar, but also being intrigued. I was like, okay, let's read Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj from back to front in English. And so that's what I did. I started reading English translation of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj from back to front. So I started, around February time 2023, reading Maharaj in English. Funnily enough, the translation I read was by a Gora called Dr. Sant Singh, who's from the 3HO lot, which, I'm not one of them, by the way, is what I'm going to say about those guys. But I read their translation, and the way the translation was laid out really hurt my brain. It had the original, Gurbani, and then it had the transliteration, and then after that I had the English. And so I sat down on the evening. I was like, okay, I'm going to read like maybe for an hour or 2 hours. I sat down, I had like a big packet of biscuits next to me. I was like, okay, let's read Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. Let's start. And I got to Mool Mantra. I didn't know what the Mool Mantra was. I was reading it. I was like, what the flip? I didn't know what I was reading at all. It was like every other book I've read is kind of like fairly easy to follow. When the Gurbani in English, I think it was just a bit too much for me. I remember I got to the end of the first body of Japji Sahib, and every single line like shook me a little bit. And that's all I read the first day. I was like, okay, that's enough for one day. I read the first body. I was like, the first body made me question my entire life. Made me question the reason why am I even reading this? Everything. I was like, okay, let's close my laptop, go to bed, sleep on it, and we'll come back tomorrow. I'll read a little bit more. And so, I was trying to read Maharaj like a book. It didn't work. That's not how it works. And what I want to talk about is, a lot of the time, we put down English translations, which is fair enough because they're incomplete and they're not the best. But for me, I didn't have any Sangat pretty much at first. This is right at the start. I don't have any Sangat. And so English Gurbani translations was basically everything for me. I couldn't understand the original. I wasn't listening to the Katha yet because I didn't know what it was. So I was just reading English translations of Gurbani, and you'll see later on in the PowerPoint what comes from just reading English translations of Gurbani. So it isn't perfect, but I want to say, if someone's reading English, don't discourage them. They'll get there eventually. So then I was like, okay, let's read some Itihas as well. I want to find out who Guru Nanak Dev Ji was at first. And I kind of had this thought in my mind, like, the first thing it came up when I Googled it was like English writers, all English names. I was like, I had enough like of a brain to be like, okay, maybe these aren't the guys I should go to. So I ended up coming across Bhai Bishan Singh's book, Guru Nanak Chamatkar. And I was like, okay, I'll get a physical copy of this. I'll read this. This will give me my base. So that's where I started with the class. And then at the same time, Gurbani on its own in these English translations confused me quite a lot, I'll be honest. And so I started watching basics videos at the same time. And at this point in time, my YouTube feed was completely filled with basically videos of Muslim debating people and winning, funnily enough, because it's on their YouTube account and that's what they post. And so, okay, I'd watched quite a few of those videos. And one off of this guy here, let me get him up. Muhammad Hijab, right? In the middle there. His YouTube channel has a video of him debating Jagraj Singh from Basis of Sikhi, a half-an-hour video. It's edited to make him look like he wins. But I watched the entire video. I was like, this Jagraj Singh guy's pretty sick. I liked him quite a lot. And the entire comment section, even if you go now, is basically just on his side, on Jagraj's side, talking about Sikhi, praising Sikhi, based on what he said in this video. People who've never heard of Sikhi, and they come on to this video, and they're like, okay, Sikhi's quite interesting. So then the early days, right? So this is when I first came into Sikhi, and I was still reading Maharaj at this point. This is the time in between when I started reading Maharaj to when I finished reading Maharaj in English. What happened in my life? So it changed my life quite a lot, just doing that. So in mid-February, I was like, I'm going to stop eating meat. Because of the prachar I'd heard, I didn't like the idea that I was eating meat. And it was every single night in my house as well. And so one day, I'm coming back from hanging out with my friends, and my mum calls me. I'm about to open the door, and I'd been thinking earlier that day, I don't want to eat meat anymore. I got to stop. And then my mum called me and said, Sam, that's my original name, Sam. Do you want bacon sandwich for dinner? I was like, nah, I don't want that. I'm going vegetarian. Mum was like, fair enough. Okay, you're going veggie. That's fine. That's good for your health. So he's like, okay, we'll have cheese sandwiches instead. And so that's the story of how I went vegetarian. Then towards the end of February, it was my 17th birthday. And I'd already thought like, oh, this drinking thing isn't really doing it for me. I used to drink quite a lot. Because in white families, you start drinking typically from the age of like 13, 14. So I was drinking from the age of like 12. And I don't know, it got boring, but it was also like bad for me as well, obviously. And so I had my last drink on my 17th birthday. I had the drink in my hand, right? I said, this is my last one, and then I had it anyway, which, I don't know what I was doing, to be honest. But I had it, and then I said, I'll stop. And one thing, I didn't realize this until I looked back, but I started listening to Nityanem every single day from quite early on. Before I kept my case, before I knew much about Sikhi at all, I was like, okay, Japji Sahib in the morning, Reras in the evening. I used to be playing like Minecraft or something, and I just put Reras on in the background. But I was listening to it anyway, and then before I went to bed, I'd read Soda Sahib as well. And that was from really early on. Yeah, and I didn't even realize how early that was on when I went back and looked for this talk. And then I went to the Guru Garh twice a week. It was a bit of a trek at first, because where I live in Nottingham's like probably like 45 minutes by drive away from most Guru Garhs in Nottingham. And I was getting a bus, and I think it took probably about an hour, just over an hour to get there on 2 different buses. So I tried to make the trip twice a week. And I remember the first time I ever went to the Guru Garh was one of the few Sikh at my school. I told them I'm trying to get into Sikhi. I told them, and they were like, okay, I'm not really religious, but I think it's a good thing to do. I'll take you to the Guru Garh. And they took me on the bus straight from school. I went on a Wednesday, and there was nobody there. And I was still terrified. I was like, what's going to happen? Like, I don't know. I'm not welcome here. I don't know if I'm welcome here. I just went, had prashad, did matha, and had langar, and then went. And it was like, that was wicked. I enjoyed it. I feel like that day, I didn't know. I feel like that day we have to realize when we go to Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj's Sharan and put our head in front of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, everything can change. Like that. Everything can change. And so I don't think I realized quite at that point how much that changed my life, but it must have. And so the other thing I want to talk about is with Nityanem, right? From really early on, I was listening to Nityanem without even knowing what it was. I think a lot of us get worried now that we're doing our Nityanem and we don't have a clue about the artha or the meaning, and we're trying to learn, but we're not at that point where we can read our Japji Sahib and still be able to like fully take it in. My advice would be, just listen anyway, read anyway, do the chords at the same time, make sure you're learning, but nothing's gonna happen overnight. But it don't mean you just stop listening until you get to that point. Nityanem is so important. I was doing it without even knowing how important it was. And it wasn't even like I wasn't getting up crazy early in the morning or anything. I was getting up at like 8 a.m. and then doing it. But even then, it was like, oh, it's really important. So Japji Sahib. So from really early on, I fell in love with Japji Sahib. The art of Japji Sahib, the way it sounded, everything. I can't remember what recording it was of Japji Sahib that I was listening to like every single day, like, all the time. But that recording like embedded in my mind now. And so I'd constantly listen to Japji Sahib all the time. So I went from music all the time, rap music, everything. I just like, oh no, this isn't really doing it for me anymore. I was like, let's listen to Japji Sahib a few times a day, at least. We're not going to count or anything. I'm just going to put it on repeat. That must be good for me in some way. I don't know how, but it must be. And so then I was like, let's start reading the translations every day so we can start to memorize what the meanings are when we hear the Bani. And so I started doing that. And then Kata as well. This is when I heard Jagraj Singh talk about the concept of Kata in one of his videos. I was like, what's that? And I was like, okay. He's got a few playlists on the channel. Let's have a look at his Kata first. And so he started a Japji Sahib series back in the day, like 8 years ago. Singh Sabha Southwell, I think it was. And I just started listening to at least one episode of that every single day. And then Gyani Sukraj Singh's Kata as well on Seek to Inspire. Because at that point, those were the main kind of English sources for proper kind of structured Kata. That was what I kind of had available. That's what I saw when I Googled it anyway. And then I was like, Japji Sahib is wicked. I want Japji Sahib in my back pocket. I want to be able to read Japji Sahib. I want to be able to also memorize Japji Sahib. And so before I even knew how to read Gurmukhi, I was like, one day I'm gonna memorize one paudi each day. That was what I started trying to do. And then you get to the longer ones and you're like, oh, that's not possible in a day. So I was like, okay, 2 days, maybe 3 days for the longer paudiya. And I think it took about 2 months to memorize Japji Sahib. I hadn't started my Santhiya at this point, nothing. I was just trying to memorize it so I could have it in my back pocket, basically. Yeah. So this is right on. We've only got 2 more slides left. I've really gone through this quickly, but I've got lots to talk about anyway, so we'll figure it out. So this is like the final bit of what I've got written down in terms of what happened. Is kind of the last few months before I took Amrit. So after a few months, I sat down with my parents one day. I was like, I want to keep my kiss. I want to stop cutting my hair. That's what I said to my parents. And until that point, every change I'd made in my life was like a health thing. So like, oh, I stopped eating meat, that's fine, whatever. You know, stop drinking, okay, those are they're good for you, innit? So my parents were like, fair enough, he's just being healthy. But then the fact that I've been talking about Sikhi all these months, and then I said, I want to stop cutting my hair. And then my parents heard that and were like, they just went dead silent. I was like, I don't think they knew how to process what they just kind of heard, which was, to them, that's the moment where it goes, I want to convert. I'm changing my religion now. And my parents weren't super religious at this point, but I think even then, it was enough to kind of, you know, change something, if you know what I mean. And it's not that they were worried, but I think they were just super surprised. And eventually then I started tying a dastard. And what I would do is I would wear a dastard and then I would take it off when I went to school and then I put it back on when I got home. And that was kind of the routine because I was way too scared to wear it at school yet. Because imagine everybody in my school is a Gora pretty much. Walking into school with a dastard was gonna be crazy, no matter what, no matter how long I left it. And so I was basically, at this point, I was in an organization called the Air Cadets, RAF Air Cadets. You go there, you learn how to fly planes, shoot guns, other stuff. It's really fun, but they have rules on your hair. So if you're a guy, you've got to shave your beard fully and you have to have a certain length of hair, short hair. And so what I had to do was sit down with a senior officer and basically explain to this guy why me, a white guy, wanted to keep my hair and why I wanted a reason to not cut my hair. And what he said to me was the rules is if you keep your case, if you don't cut your hair, you have to wear a dastard as well. So my hair got to a certain length and that's what forced me to start wearing a dastard outside. And so I started wearing it there, which is like twice a week. I used to wear it there. And those people there were the first people that kind of found out. And people there took it very well, because I kind of knew that. But then I walked into school a few weeks later with a dastard on, and that was kind of crazy. So I was late for school that day and I had my dastard still on. I was literally on the toilet and it was taking a little bit too long, basically. And I had to just go out the house with my dastard still on. And I had to run for it. I didn't even think, and it only occurred to me when I was on the bus on the way to school, I still had my dastard on. I was like, no, I've got to walk to school with my dastard on now. And so I did it. I walked in and people immediately, so my school used to have a crossing on the way in, a zebra crossing. And I literally remember people waiting on the other side for their friends, people from my year. And I was just waiting to cross. Cars were coming past. The bus came past. And then once the bus had come past, they could see me. And like 5 or 6 people just looked at me like, what? Like their eyes went wide and they're like, what's this guy got on his head, basically? That was kind of scary. And that's when my Sikhi kind of went public. And I remember before that, I'd kind of gone to the Gurukar a few times on the bus, and people from my year at school had seen me. And they were like, what are you doing, basically? Because I would have a dastar on or something, or even just a patka on. And I'd go, and they'd be like, where are you going? And I couldn't lie to them, and so I explained it to them. So eventually it kind of got around that, Sam's basically converted or something. And so it basically became a rumor. Like people would come up to me and go, have you changed your religion? All the time at school. And I was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I just would blank them, basically. That was kind of awkward as well. I did ardas that once I got to a certain point, I felt like I'd ticked a lot of the boxes off. And I was like, Maharaj, next in Sanchar I see, I'm going to go to that Amrit Sanchar. And I think it was a few days later, one of my Sikh friends from school, sent me an Amrit Sanchar poster. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough then. It was literally the same day, I think, or the day after, they sent me a Sanchar poster. I was like, I didn't realize it was going to be that soon, but we'll go. And that Sanchar was the week after. So right at the end of June, on the 25th of June, 2023, I went and took Amrit. From December, when I didn't know nothing about Sikhi. I didn't know one Guru, let alone 10 Gurus. Then into February, I got more into it. And by the time it was June, so mid that year, I was Amritari. And that whole section of my life is a complete blur. To write this talk and actually tell people like, this is what happened, that is what happened. It took a while to like wrap my head around what actually happened. Because I don't often look back and think about it and kind of digest it. And so, and then I came back to school after the holidays. And I had a Gurban on, but I used to wear it underneath. And it was just one time I had my Gurban showing, and one teacher went mad. They got scared. They kind of backed off from me as if I was going to attack them or something. And came to me and said, I'm going to report you. You've not got a right to be wearing that. And I tried to explain that I can. And then, remember, this was the second time actually that my head of year had pulled me up for something Sikhi related. Because the original story was that I went in and my head of year basically told me off for being racist because I had a star on my head. That was like second, third day. I had a star on my head and my teacher was like, what are you doing? You're mocking people's religion. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I didn't quite clock like how it might look from the outside. And I hadn't explained it. But that was quite funny as well. And then the second time was about my Gurban. And they sent me home because of my Gurban. They're like, no, you can't have that. Legally, you're not allowed it. And I was like, well, I am. Just Google it. And then it took a long time. They sent me home that same day. And then I literally got 2 weeks off of school. But the problem was I didn't want 2 weeks off of school because my A-levels were that year. And so it wasn't good. And then I came back 2 weeks later and the head of year was very sorry. Very, very sorry. And I don't know how they didn't have a policy on it, to be honest, because that academy's got schools in Birmingham and stuff. So I don't know. Right, okay. Last slide. And then I'll just talk without the PowerPoint for a bit because I don't think I've talked for very long. Lessons learned, basically. Sikhi is not just about Maryada. I know it is about Maryada, obviously. Like, don't just do what you want. But I didn't come through Sikhi. Someone told me really early on, when you learn about Sikhi, have this one thing in your head. Sikhi is not about the rules. I remember hearing that and going, oh, that means there's no rules in Sikhi. Then why has this person got a star on their head? Why can't they cut the kids? But when I realized what they actually meant, what they meant is Sikhi is about prem. And the rules come second, right? We all have different rules. Every person in this room's got different rules. The rules is just a personal thing. It's for your body, right? But what we should all have is prem. Prem for every single person you see, right? Because if we don't have that, then what? If we don't have prem for that, because God's everywhere, then how are we going to love God? We don't love God, then do we? And I learned that really early on. I remember being told that and being confused and then realizing slowly kind of what it meant. beyond anything is a key, right? Any rule, anything that we like to get on kind of get in debates with each other about. You have to love Naam and you have to love Gurbani as well. So I remember when I was reading Guru Granth Sahib Ji in English, I think the first kind of, until the Mad, I was confused. Until the middle of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Mad, I was confused. I think it got around that point and I started realizing that I was reading it wrong. I started realizing that I wasn't reading it as if it was the Guru. I wasn't reading it as if this was an upadesh from above me, down to me, and I was just reading it like, I need to get knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge. But when I realized what it was really about, that's when the changes started to come. And the same with Naam as well. So your Jeevan can have anything in it. You can, how many Japji Sahibs do I do? But if you don't have a love for Naam and you're just doing it for the sake of being able to say it or something like that, it's useless, completely useless. That's something I've got to tell myself more than you guys, innit? But I had to put it in there. The other thing is, it's important to say this, it's about parents, right? You have to always show love to your parents, no matter what. They might disagree with everything that you do, but you have to show them love. And then the other thing is that your parents will tell you things, right? And I know even from my perspective that some of the things my parents were telling me wasn't actually the best advice from a Sikhi perspective. But I still had to respect what they were saying and approach it with love. I had to communicate with them. Because I think, honestly, at first, one of the biggest mistakes I made was not explaining Sikhi to my parents properly and getting frustrated and getting angry with them, like, why don't you understand what I'm doing? But now I realize that actually, how am I supposed to expect them to understand something? I'm the one who's learning about Sikhi, and I'm expecting all the knowledge that I'm learning to go into their brain so they can then agree with what I'm doing. That's not fair at all, is it? So be patient with your parents. If you're coming into Sikhi, be patient with your parents. They might disagree with you. You've got to explain every little thing to them. You've got to show them love. You can't stop the love. That's one of the most important things, I think, in terms of coming into Sikhi, especially if you're from a background, I say like mine, I don't mean like my background, but in the sense that your parents aren't in Sarup, but your parents aren't into Sikhi, you have to give them leeway. You can't think that their perspective on Sikhi is going to be perfect, but they just decide not to follow it. That's not what it is. Because they knew everything about Sikhi, they'd be better than you. The thing is that they don't. So you have to show them that love. And you have to also do prachar to your parents as well. That's one thing I kind of missed out at first, was explaining the great things that I loved about Sikhi to my parents. I think maybe they would probably, start to like Sikhi as much as I do. And when I started to do that, that's when things kind of changed in terms of my parents. You've got to constantly build that personal relationship with Guru Sahib. Sometimes we think, the program here, I'll build my relationship with Guru Sahib here in this month, or when there's a Ranspai, or when there's a camp. I'll build my relationship with Guru Sahib now. And yeah, keep your goals, your personal Jeevan, keep it all to yourself. You don't need to tell someone, I want to learn Kirtan, I want to get here in my Santhiya. You don't need to tell anybody, you just do it. So if you tell somebody, it's kind of a psychological thing. If you tell somebody, then you get the dopamine boost comes through, as if you've done it or something. And then you get lazy and you stop wanting to do it. And that's not good for your Sikhi either. Right, yeah. I think that's the end of my PowerPoint. Oh yeah, here's one thing. You can either change your Sangat or change your Sangat. I know it sounds stupid, but what I mean is either you can try Sangat. I know it sounds stupid, but what I mean is either you can try and change the way the people around you think, which is what I personally tried with the friends that I had at the time. I did prachar to them, I explained Sikhi to them. You see what happens, and then the final result is that you change the people you're around. It's not like cutting people off in a negative way, but you have to do what's best for you. And so you have to change the people that you're around. You definitely have to make sure when you're in Sikhi to keep in Sangat as much as possible. Because I'm an idiot, and so a lot of other people are idiots as well in some ways, right? In the nicest way. And if you are idiots as well in some ways, right? In the nicest way. And if you let your own mat be the only mat in your life, even in terms of humans, right? Because Gurmat is the highest, but we don't always like that. And so having other people around you that are at least trying their best to learn Sikhi and Kamal Sikhi as well. You just got to do that, and you just got to keep in Sangat. I'm saying it, but Guru Sahib said it, innit? So it's not about what I say. Yeah, that's the end of my PowerPoint, which is really bad. And I've done this before. I've written a talk, and then it goes like half as long as it's meant to be. Maybe we'll do questions or something, because that was really short. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry for all the mistakes I made. Has anyone got any questions? No. Oh, that's good. Oh, one question, go on. Have my parents changed? My parents do what they do, you know, you can't judge people, isn't it? They've not come into Sikhi. They're not Amrit or anything. But they don't, one thing I'm really grateful for is my parents let me do my thing. My parents let me keep my rahat in it, and then they have their rahat as well. And so that's one thing. You might not change your parents in terms of they're going to become a Mahabharata, right? What you can do is work with them enough where they're going to let you be in Sikhi, which is like, that's all you need for your Jivan. It's not perfect, but it's enough where you can kind of crack on yourself. So no, my parents didn't become Amritdai or anything, but they let me do what I do, which is a big gift. Any more questions? Not really off the top of my head, to be honest. I think Katha is better than translations, to be honest. Katha is better than translation, because that's where the context comes from. And this word means that. Here's the story behind it. They'll just tell you kind of, this is what it means direct, and you don't kind of build any that. My understanding of Gurbani vocabulary didn't get much better. It's only when I started listening to Katha, that's when it built up. So the best thing is Katha, to be honest. I was just doing what I thought was the best thing to do by reading translation. Yeah, basics is the best place for that to start, at least. Seek to inspire as well. There's lots of English people popping up now, which is good.
Your journey learning Punjabi or Punjabi words?
I'll be honest with you, my Punjabi is really bad, so there's not much journey. The only thing is going from... And then I started online with Bhai Bishan Singh from Australia after that, once I came to uni. I did everything else there. And at the moment I'm on Bhai. So yeah, that's where I'm now. Yeah.
You know, some people say that when you read Gurbani in English, and then when you read it in Gurmukhi, you feel it in a different way. Did you experience that?
As in, reading it in Gurmukhi is kind of, you get an experience from that?
Yeah.
I would say yes. So the experience of reading Gurbani, in terms of the sound that Gurbani makes, that comes from the original Gurbani. That comes from reading Gurbani originally as Guru Sahib wrote it. So yeah, the experience comes from that. But I'm saying in terms of Jivan, you can still learn things from the English. So the aspect of Gurbani where you're learning, that comes from the English. But obviously the original is kind of where all the power comes from, obviously. Yeah.
Which was the hardest Gurmukhi letter to pronounce?
I think at first it was because like I've had a lisp for ages, like since I was a kid. I had a really bad lisp, but I've still kind of got it, but it's not as bad as I was before. Remember, I used to do anana, and then lots of spit would come on the end of my tongue and like go into my nose and stuff, man. I think I was trying too hard, to be honest. But yeah. Anything else? How did I find that I changed? That's one thing. I didn't include anything from after Amrit because I feel like it feels too recent. Like I'm just talking about my life, and that's a bit boring. So after Amrit, I think everything slowed down after Amrit, because I think everything was building up to Amrit. I would say that's when the Sangat came. So I wasn't in Sangat for about a year, really, because when I was in Nottingham, I was still living at home with my parents all the time. And it was difficult to kind of explain to them, I'm going here for a program, I'm going there for a program, because to them, like, their only experience of religion is like Christianity, where no one goes to another flipping county for a program in Christianity. That doesn't exist. You just go to your local church. And so they didn't understand why I've got to go to Coventry and Birmingham when there's Sikhs in Nottingham. Why do you have to go somewhere else? And so my Sangat mainly stayed to Nottingham. And I'll be honest, a lot of the Nottingham Sangat is great. There's some people from Nottingham even here today. But I did have a lot of negative experiences there. And so I tried to go to kind of Derby and things like that instead. Derby and here as well, Leicester, when I came to uni. And so, yeah, that's the main thing that changed afterwards, is I had no Sangat until I took Amrit. It was a year after without Sangat. And that's when, I think that was the other big change, was coming to uni and getting Sangat at university here in Leicester. So that's the reason I'm here, is because I'm at university. And so the biggest change is having Sangat. Because then I was like, there's little things you don't learn on your own. There's little things you don't even learn from Katha, and you have to go into Sangat to find those things out. And so that's when everything changed, I think, again.
Like, you just said that you go to college, so do you wear your star?
In college, do I wear my star? Yeah, I wear my star all the time. All the time I wear the my star, yeah.
Have you had the chance to go to Harimandir?
I've not been to Punjab yet, I've not been to India yet. And I was meant to be going at the end of this month, and then that didn't happen. The people I was going with bailed on me, so yeah.
It's a very, very special experience.
Yeah. I need to make the trip.
Gurdwara in India, you just feel so different.
Yeah.
So I took my kids to India.
Yeah. I think that'll be the third big change in my life, is going to India. I think that's when everything will become a little bit more real as well. Yeah, I need to get there, definitely. Yeah, that's the other thing with going to India. I can't lie to my parents and say I'm at university. I can't go to, 8 hours across the ocean. You can't really lie about that very easily. But yeah.
So, when you were going to decide to take Amrit Didar,
Mm-hmm.
did you read up on it and looked into it? Did you know about breath and
Yeah.
what routine you need to have afterwards, or
So I think by that point, I didn't have knowledge. I knew what Amritari was. I knew what Amrit was, and I knew what Amritari had to do every day. And as soon as I found that information out, I think it was literally just from watching basics videos. I figured out, okay, you need to get up in the morning before 6, do your Panchbaniya. There's these things you have to keep on you, these things you can't do. And I knew that, I had it in my head. And it was probably the same week, to be honest, that I said I want to go to an Amrit Sanchar, that I found that out, to be honest. There wasn't like a big space in between. But once I found out, I was like, I'll go to this Sanchar. And then that Sanchar was a week after I saw the poster. And in that week, I was like, okay, I've got to go every single day in this week. And I've got to make sure I'm on it. And by the end of the week, I was all right enough to go and take Amrit somehow.
The reason why I asked that was because I think that's the bit that scares a lot of people. Because when people want to do it, they want to be perfect at it, and they're too scared of what if I'm not able to do this, what if I'm not able to do that. So is there any advice you could give to people who actually been just thinking about it for a long time but just been putting it off just for that reason?
I think I'll give what my situation was. Because I knew that Amrit was important. I knew that I had to take it at some point. And I also didn't have any stigma around Amrit. And so what I mean by that is, I didn't have this concept that you had to be perfect to take Amrit. I just thought I had to get there as soon as I could. And I also didn't have people around me who I didn't have a concept of what an Amritari was. I just thought Amritari is like the best thing you can be, like life complete. And so I want to be that. I looked up to Amritari. So I would say people who are scared of taking Amrit, there's a few things to blame for that, isn't there? First of all, there's Amritaris being judgmental, right? They don't want to be judged for not being good enough. They don't want to become like those Amritaris. And also that there's stigma around it, that they think it's the hardest thing in the world. And so what we have to do is, and we do prachar that Amrit is not that hard. And once you get into a routine, you can make your routine as strict as you want. It just takes a certain amount of time to get used to it. So that's not difficult. And the other thing is making sure that us, as people who are Amritari, so all the Amritaris that are here, stop being so judgmental. So that's what's stopping people. And you're not bringing people into Sikhi. What are we told before we even give them or show them any praying? They're never going to come anywhere near Amrit. So it's not just the fault of the person who's struggling, is it? It's the fault of the people they're around. It's the fault of us as a community, as a pant, to kind of, encourage that person, show that person love. because then they definitely will take Amrit eventually. Because all I'd seen is love. I hadn't got any judgment or anything, and that's why I think it was so easy, because I just went and did it, because I knew that that's what I had to do, and it became 10 times easier. So that's what I'd say. Anything else? No? No. Okay. All right. I'm sorry for the mistakes I made. I'm sorry that it was, like a half an hour talk or something. I tried my best to make an hour long PowerPoint, but I've got no concept of time apparently. So yeah, I'm sorry for the mistakes I made. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਧੰਨ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਆ ਕੋਲਮ ਸਪੂਕ ਹਾਫਨ ਐਂਡ ਕ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਆ even me I met Bishan Singh about a year and a half ago and he's so humble I didn't know none of this anything he said in the PowerPoint I didn't know any of this so he doesn't like glow about his journey or talk too much about it. So thanks for Bishan Singh for agreeing to talk. It takes a tremendous amount of courage. The horn speaker da सम्मान होगा. बोले सो निहाल. And so next week we have a talk on Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Maharaj. Carrying on the Ihas, and we have chips and beans which are going to be ready in I think 5 minutes. So, सारिਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਫੀ ਜਾਣਾ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਜੀ।